little sister called me at 6 in the morning to describe my bedroom in perfect detail, down to the crack in the ceiling shaped like Florida, and she has never once set foot in my apartment. I'm posting this because I think I'm losing people to something that started as a bad dream, and I don't know how to make it stop. And honestly, I don't know if I'm the victim here or the reason it's happening at all. I'm Danny, 28. I manage a hardware store in Tulsa. I have a golden retriever named Waffles, and up until 7 weeks ago, my life was aggressively, almost insultingly normal. I'm telling you that up front because I need you to understand how far from the type of guy this happens to I actually am. I once cried during a Subaru commercial. I am not built for whatever this is. Entry 1, March 15th. It started as a regular sleep paralysis episode, the kind I'd had maybe 3 or 4 times in my life. Woke up frozen, this crushing weight sitting on my chest like somebody parked a car on me. And a presence I couldn't see but absolutely felt hovering near the foot of the bed. The room smelled wrong, metallic, like pennies left too long in a wet pocket. And underneath that something organic. Something I didn't have a word for yet. It lasted maybe 90 seconds. Terrifying, sure, but I've had worse Mondays. 3 days later, my roommate Kev mentioned, completely out of nowhere over cereal, that he'd had this bizarre nightmare about our apartment. Paralyzed in his own bed, he said, watching something gather itself together in the corner like smoke deciding to be a person. Same apartment. Same corner. Kev has never had sleep paralysis in his life. I know this because Kev tells me everything, whether I want to hear it or not. I told myself it was a coincidence. We live in the same 600 square feet. Maybe it's mold, spores. Maybe it's the pizza place downstairs giving us both weird dreams through sheer proximity to old cheese. Entry 2, March 22nd. It's not mold. My mom called me Tuesday night, and before I could even ask how she was doing, she launched into this vivid, unprompted description of a nightmare. She was in my bedroom, my actual bedroom, in my actual apartment, which she has never visited because she lives 4 states away and thinks flying is tempting fate. She described the smell, copper, something rotten underneath it. I asked her, carefully, trying to keep my voice normal, what she saw in the corner. Something that was gathering itself, she said, like it was remembering how to be solid. Those were her exact words. Remembering how to be solid. My mother, who thinks horoscopes are a scam and once made me return a Ouija board to the store because it was, quote, inviting trouble, used the same phrase my roommate had used about a room she's never seen, describing something. Neither of them could have compared notes on. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my kitchen with Waffles' head in my lap and every light in the apartment on, and I told myself I was being ridiculous. I was not being ridiculous. Entry 3, March 29th. I started keeping track because if I didn't write it down, I was going to convince myself none of it was real, which honestly might have been the healthier option. I reached out to 12 people. Friends, my sister, a couple co-workers, an ex I really shouldn't have. Texted at 11 p.m. I asked, as casually as I could manage, if anyone had been having weird dreams lately. Sleep paralysis, specifically. 8 of the 12 said yes. 8 people. Same entity. Same vague description of a presence gathering itself in a corner. 4 of them had never experienced sleep paralysis before in their lives, and all 8, every single one, placed it in my bedroom, my walls, my ceiling, the specific broken slat in my blinds that throws a stripe of street light across the floor at exactly the wrong angle to fall asleep properly. None of them have ever been to my apartment. Entry 4, April 5th. Something changed last night, and I need to say this next part slowly because saying it fast makes it sound insane, and saying it slow only makes it sound worse. I had another episode, my first in over a week, and the thing in the corner wasn't a smudge this time. It was defined, solid in a way it hadn't been before, like somebody had finally found the right settings. On a projector, I think I understand why. Every time one of them dreams about my room, it gets a little more real, a little more finished. Like it's being built out of borrowed attention, reinforced by every mind that imagines it into existence, whether they mean to or not. It's not haunting my bedroom. It's using 12 people's fear as construction material. When I woke up gasping, cold sweat down my back, I could still smell it in the room. Copper, rot, and something new underneath, something dry and papery. Chalk dust. I didn't understand why until later, and I really wish I still didn't. Entry 5, April 12th. The entity is showing up in their dreams with details I never told anyone. Details I never experienced. Myself. My friend Priya dreamed she watched it drawing on my bedroom wall. A blueprint, she said. Lines. And angles that hurt to look at directly, like your eyes wanted to slide off them. My ex, the one I probably shouldn't have texted, dreamed it turned and looked directly at her. She described its face as a shape that shouldn't exist in 3 dimensions, which is an oddly articulate thing to say about a nightmare for someone who once described our entire 2-year relationship as fine, I guess. My coworker Marcus, who I mostly know from complaining about inventory software, dreamed he could see straight through my bedroom floor into more rooms underneath it. Empty rooms. Endless rooms. All of them waiting. Every one of them is adding something new. And God help me, I think it's getting bigger because of what they imagine, not smaller. Entry 6, April 19th. The episodes are more frequent now. Multiple times a night, some nights. And every time I surface from one, my hand is already moving before I'm fully awake. This compulsion crawling up my arm that I can't ignore any more than you can ignore the need to breathe. I draw. I always draw. But here's the thing I haven't said out loud yet. Not even to Kev. I don't think I'm drawing what I saw. I think I'm drawing what all 12 of them are seeing, together, all at once, like my hand is just the pen and something else is holding it. My sketchbook doesn't look like nightmare doodles anymore. It looks like architectural plans. Floor. Layouts of something enormous, built entirely out of bedrooms, connected by hallways that twist in, ways that make my stomach hurt to trace with my finger. Every room has a name written under it in careful block letters. I recognize 5 of them. 3 are people from my group of 12. 2 of them I have never met in my life. Entry 7, April 26th. I found one of the strangers. Jennifer, in Portland. Took me an embarrassingly long time on Facebook, cross-referencing a name I'd copied off a sketch at 3 in the morning like some kind of deranged detective. I messaged her without explaining why, just asked if she'd had any strange dreams lately. Her reply came back in under a minute. How did you know? I've had paralysis nightmares for a week straight. Always the same. Bedroom, somewhere I've never been. And there's something in there with me. Something building. She described my bedroom down to the crooked blind slat. She'd never seen a photo of it. I checked. My Instagram is nothing but waffles and hardware store memes. She also mentioned corridors. Sketched on the walls, she said. The exact corridors from my notebook in a city 1,400 miles from mine. Entry 8, May 3rd. I have 47 people now. 47 strangers and friends and family members, all dreaming about the same bedroom mine. All watching the same thing assemble itself out of the raw material of their collective fear. And here is the part 1 I've been avoiding writing for 2 days, because once it's typed out, I don't get to pretend anymore. I no longer know if I started this. 2 nights ago, I had another episode, and when I came out of it, there was a drawing on my nightstand. I didn't make it. Or, I don't remember making it, which at this point might be the same thing. My handwriting, sure, but with annotations in other hands, other pens, names I recognize from Portland and Austin and Denver and Toronto. People I've messaged. People I've never met. They've been in the dream with me, drawing alongside me, using my nightmare as shared blueprint. Paper, and none of us signed up to be architects. And yet here we are, 47 people, hands moving in our sleep across a continent, building the same impossible place one unconscious stroke at a time. I think I finally understand what's happening, and I wish understanding made it stop, but it doesn't work that way. This was never a haunting. We're not being visited. We're designing something. Together, 47 of us now, and climbing. Each nightmare adding another wall, another hallway, another reinforced inch of something that exists nowhere except in the space we all share. When we close our eyes, and it's becoming real. I don't know how else to say that and have it still sound sane. I had another episode last night. When I surfaced, I could smell the blueprint before I even opened my eyes. That same dry chalk dust, like the air itself had been sketched on. But this time was different. This time I finally saw the thing clearly, fully, for the first time since March. It was using my face to do the drawing. The hands tracing lines into the dark. My hands. The low voice I could hear directing where the next corridor should go, patient and certain, the way you talk someone through parking a car, my voice. Except I have never spoken those words while awake in my life. I think I've been the architect this whole time. I think I have been since the very first night, and everyone else, all 47 of them, they're not haunting me. They're helping me finish. Waffles won't come in my bedroom anymore. He used to sleep at the foot of my bed every single night since he was a puppy. Now he waits at the doorway and whines, and some nights he won't even look past the threshold. And I think that's the detail that scares me more than any of the rest of it, because dogs don't imagine things, and dogs don't build anything. If you've had a nightmare about a bedroom you don't recognize in the last 2 months, and you saw something gathering itself in the corner, I need you to message me. Not because I want company, because I think I need to know how many rooms are left before this is finished, and whether there's a version of finished that doesn't end with me disappearing into my own blueprint. If a stranger describes your bedroom, ask them what's in the corner. I hear a sound nobody else can hear, and 3 nights ago it started drawing on me. Not near me, on me. I woke up with a line across my collarbone that wasn't there when I fell asleep, and I have not told my husband. Because how do you tell the person who loves you that something has started? Marking your body like a piece of furniture waiting to be assembled. My name doesn't matter for this. Call me whatever you want. I'm 31, I sell insurance in a mid-size office outside Columbus, Ohio. And until 8 months ago, the scariest thing in my life was my mother-in-law's opinion of my cooking. I'm not the type to believe in ghosts. I can barely believe in flossing regularly. So when I tell you what's been happening to me, understand that I fought this explanation for a long time before I ran out of other ones. It started small, the way these things always do. Ordinary sleep paralysis. I'd wake up frozen, chest tight, a shape in the corner of the room that dissolved the second I could move again. I'd had it a handful of times since college. Stressful week, bad sleep, brain glitches. You breathe through it. You make coffee. You move on. Except this time, it didn't stay in the bedroom. About a week after that first episode, I started hearing static. Not from a radio, not from the baby monitor we still hadn't gotten rid of even though our son is 4 now. It was inside my own head, this low electrical hiss, like someone had never quite turned off a television in a room down the hall of my skull. I told my husband, Mark, and he laughed. Not unkindly, just the way you laugh when your wife says something a little odd at dinner. Probably your sinuses, he said. Or you're finally losing it after 4 years of toddler radio in the car. I laughed too. It was easier than arguing. The static had a rhythm, though. That's the part one didn't tell him. It wasn't random noise. It pulsed, paused, pulsed again, like it was counting something, or like it was breathing. For the first 3 weeks, it only came at night, right as the paralysis set in. I'd feel that horrible pressure on my chest, that inability to even blink properly, and the static would build behind my eyes, until it peaked into this awful shriek, and then release. I'd gasp awake, soaked in sweat, and Mark would sleep right through it, because apparently my personal haunting comes with noise canceling. For everyone except me. Then it followed me to work. I was in a budget meeting, nodding along to something about Q3 projections, when the tingling started at the base of my skull. I know that sounds dramatic. It felt dramatic, like a wire had been threaded under my scalp and someone, somewhere, had just turned the current on. The static rolled in like weather. I excused myself to the bathroom, told my coworker Denise I thought I was getting a migraine, which, at this point, felt less like a lie and more like a mercy I was doing for both of us. I sat on the closed toilet lid with my hands pressed over my ears, which did absolutely nothing, obviously, because the sound wasn't coming from outside my skull. It was already in there. When it finally faded, 5 minutes later, maybe 10, I had the strangest urge. Not to cry, not to call Mark, to draw. I didn't even have paper. I used the receipt from my lunch, uncapped a pen I don't remember pulling from my bag, and by the time the fog cleared, I'd covered the back of a Chipotle receipt in these small, precise geometric shapes, angles that didn't sit right, little corridors that folded in on themselves like the drawing equivalent of a bad math problem. I threw it away. I want that on record. I threw the first one away like a normal, sane woman who has a family and a mortgage and does not have time for whatever this was. I couldn't throw away the second one, or the third, or the 11 that came after, because by then I'd started keeping a notebook specifically so I wouldn't ruin any more receipts. Here's the part one haven't told anyone, not even the 2 friends I still occasionally get wine with. The sketches weren't random. They were the same shapes, over and over, refined a little more each time, like something was practicing through my hand. Corridors, small rooms, and in the center of every single drawing, without exception, a shape like a doorway that didn't connect to anything. I looked up sleep paralysis forums at 2 in the morning, which is never a good sign for your mental health, and found exactly one thread that made the hair on my arms stand up. A man in Manchester, England, described the same static, the same compulsion to draw. He'd posted photos of his sketches. They matched mine. Not similar. Matched. The same doorway shape, the same failed corridors. Drawn by a stranger 4,000 miles away who I have never spoken to and never will, because his account went silent 11 days after that post, and nobody in the thread ever heard from him. Again, that's when I stopped sleeping on purpose. I told Mark I had insomnia. Also not exactly a lie. I sat up most nights with all the lights on, coffee going cold on the side table, telling myself I was being ridiculous, that stress does strange things to a person, that I would call a doctor on Monday. Monday came. I didn't call anyone, because on Sunday night, exhausted past the point of choice, I fell asleep in the armchair in our living room, and the paralysis hit before I even felt myself drift off. No warning this time. Just instantly frozen, eyes open, looking at our own living room, at the muted television still playing some rerun, and I understood with total clarity that I was not alone in the room. I couldn't see it exactly. I want to be honest about that, because I think honesty is the only thing that makes any of this worth telling. I didn't see a shadow man or a hag or anything from a campfire story. I saw an absence, a patch of the room that the light seemed to avoid, sitting in the corner by the bookshelf, and it had a shape to it that hurt to look at directly, the way staring at the sun for half a second leaves a scar on your vision. And it was drawing on me. I felt it before I understood it. A thin, precise pressure along my collarbone, cold and deliberate, like being traced with the flat side of an ice cube that had somehow learned geometry. I could not scream. I could not move my hand 3 feet to knock the lamp over, to do anything. I lay there and felt a line drawn into my skin that I would later find was not a scratch, not a bruise, but something closer to a brand, raised slightly, permanent, the exact pale color of an old scar despite happening 30 seconds earlier. When the paralysis broke, I didn't scream then either. I just sat in the dark, shaking, and touched the line on my collarbone until I convinced myself it was real, because some small, exhausted part of my brain kept insisting it had to be a dream, and the mark just kept insisting back. I finally went to a doctor. Not for the marks. God, imagine trying to explain the marks, but for stress and insomnia, the two most useful lies in the English language. She looked at my collarbone, frowned, called it an unusual scar, asked if I remembered an injury. I said I must have. Scratched myself in my sleep. She wrote it down without much interest and sent me home with something to help me sleep. The pills didn't stop the static. They just made it harder to wake up once it started. That's the part that terrifies me most, if I'm being honest with you the way I haven't been honest with anyone else in my life. The paralysis used to end. Now some nights it doesn't fully release. I come back to my body in stages. First my eyes, then my jaw, then, eventually, my hands, and each stage takes a little longer than the last. 3 nights ago, the marking spread. A second line, this one along my collarbone's twin on the other side, connecting at my sternum in an angle that matched, almost exactly, the doorway shape from my notebook. I finally showed Mark. I don't know why that night and not before. Maybe because I was tired of being the only witness to my own dismantling. He went pale in a way I've genuinely never seen on him. Not disbelief, recognition, which was almost worse, because for one horrible second I thought he was going to tell me he'd been marked. 2. And some part of me wanted that, wanted not to be the only one. He hadn't been. He just knew, somehow, without me explaining anything, that what he was looking at wasn't a rash or a burn or anything a person does to themselves by accident. You need to see someone, he said. Not a doctor. He didn't specify who. I don't think he knew either. I haven't slept in a bed in 4 nights. I sit in the armchair with the lights on, phone in hand, typing this out because some instinct older than logic is telling me that if enough people know, if this gets witnessed by strangers on the internet the way that man in Manchester was witnessed right before he went quiet, maybe it changes something. Maybe being seen is a kind of anchor. The static started an hour ago. It's building now as I type this, that low electric pulse climbing behind my eyes, and my hand has started to ache with that specific, familiar urge to draw, even though I am fighting it. Even though I am gripping this phone so hard my knuckles have gone white. I can feel a third line forming under my collar, cold and patient, tracing itself into place like it's connecting the first 2 into something larger. Something with a shape I recognize now from 11 notebook pages and a stranger's forum post from 4,000 miles away. A doorway. I don't think it's marking me at random. I think it's been measuring me this whole time. How much space I take up, how I'm built, where the load-bearing points of a person actually are, the way an architect measures a room before deciding what wall can finally come down. If you've ever woken up frozen with a weight on your chest and told yourself it was nothing, check your collarbone tonight. Check while the lights are still on. Please. I can't feel my hands anymore. The static just went quiet, which after everything I've learned, is so much worse than the noise ever was. If you wake up frozen tonight, check your collarbone. I found my bedroom in a dead man's dream journal, and I haven't told anyone because they'd think I fabricated it for attention, or worse, that I'm losing my mind. But the scar on my chest is real. The burnt lines spelling out coordinates are real. And the fact that I can't remember drawing them myself is very, very real. My name is Rachel Chun. I'm 34. I work in medical illustration for a neurological research facility in Boston, and 6 months ago, I made the mistake of doing my job too well. I should back up. The lab where I work studies sleep paralysis clusters. My role was simple. I'd receive descriptions from participants experiencing episodes and translate them into visual documentation. Hallucinations. rendered in clinical precision. Shadow figures mapped onto bedroom layouts. The old hag. Archetypes sketched from the vague descriptions of people half paralyzed in darkness. It's not glamorous work, but it's stable. After my divorce, stability was all I needed. 3 months into the project, I started noticing something in the submissions. Patterns. Not in the hallucinations themselves, but in the spaces they occurred in. People from different continents were describing bedrooms with identical architectural proportions. Not the same bedroom, different furniture, different eras based on the submission dates, but the same structure, the same wall, angles, the same corner where the entity always appeared. I mentioned this to Dr. Voss, the lab director. She's the type who wears severe glasses and speaks like she's always disappointed in your education level. Interesting, she said, not looking up from her coffee. You're noticing what we've been documenting for 15 years. 15 years. I asked why this wasn't the focus of the research. She said the grant money was for understanding the neuroscience, not the architectural implications of collective hallucination. Then she asked if I wanted to help her verify something in the archive. That's where everything started falling apart. The archive was in the basement, and I mean archive as in a room filled with filing cabinets, containing handwritten sleep logs dating back to 1923, transcriptions of dreams submitted to early sleep clinics, sleep paralysis accounts recorded by neurologists who are now dead, testimony from patients who are now very, very dead. We were looking for a specific architectural description. Dr. Voss had a hunch. She wanted to see how far back the bedroom structure repetition went. We found entries from 1952, then 1887, then 1834. Same proportions, same corner, same entity, described in the clinical language of different eras. That's when I found my bedroom, I said to Dr. Voss, pointing to a leather journal dated 1971. The description was exact. North wall, window to the right, small desk with the maple frame, the radiator. That makes that specific ticking sound. Dr. Voss didn't seem surprised. She pulled out a folder. She had it ready, I realized, and handed it to me. Inside were 47 sleep paralysis reports, all dated within the last 4 months, all describing my exact bedroom layout, all submitted by people across the continent I've never met. At the bottom of each entry, someone had written notes in handwriting that made my stomach drop. It was my handwriting. Notes I didn't remember writing. Descriptions of things I'd never seen. Architectural annotations in my specific, left-handed script, talking about completing the structure and marking the pillars and finalizing the geometry. How is this possible? I asked. That's what we're trying to understand, Dr. Voss said. It started happening in August. Your bedroom appeared in our database, but you'd never submitted to the study. When we looked into it, we found these anonymous entries, all describing your space. Then your handwriting started appearing in the archive entries, despite the dates being decades before you were born. I wanted to leave. I wanted to report this to someone. Though who reports what exactly? That the archive was a hoax. That I was pranked by the entire neuroscience department? Instead, I asked the question I wish I hadn't. What happens if I ignore this? Dr. Voss closed the folder and looked at me with actual concern, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from her. You don't ignore it, she said. That's the point. You can't ignore it. That night, I had sleep paralysis for the first time in my adult life. I woke unable to move, my heart hammering against my ribs. The weight on my chest felt like someone was sitting on me, pressing down with deliberate pressure. My bedroom was dark except for the ambient light from the street below, the same light that always filtered through that window to the right. And in the corner every single sleep paralysis report mentioned, something was gathering itself. I want to be clear, I didn't see a figure. I saw the absence of space. Like reality had a hole in it, and something was using that hole as a doorway. It had geometry to it, wrong angles, proportions that hurt to look at even in the darkness. And it was drawing. By the sixth night, exhaustion won. I fell asleep on my couch at 2 a.m., and the paralysis took me immediately. No gradual onset. Just instantly frozen, my eyes open and aware, and the entity already there, more solid now, more present, drawing something onto the wall above my head. This time, I could see the marks appear. Burnt lines. Permanent. A blueprint of a space I've never seen, with annotations in my handwriting describing it as the convergence point and the chamber, where all sleepers gather. When the paralysis released and I could move, I went to my bedroom and looked at the wall. The burns were there. Real. Raised slightly from the plaster, like something had heated the wall from the inside. At work the next day, Dr. Voss took one look at me and asked me to follow her to the archive. "How many episodes?" she asked. 5. 6 if you count the one last night. "And each time, it leaves marks?" I nodded. I didn't tell her that the marks were getting more complex, that they were forming a cohesive structure across multiple surfaces in my apartment. That last night, I'd noticed burn marks appearing on my desk, my nightstand, even my bedroom door, all in my own handwriting, all describing architectural spaces that were becoming disturbingly familiar to me. The others reported the same thing, Dr. Voss said. About 3 weeks in. Others, before you. The first 17 people this happened to. The word before hung in the air like a verdict. "Where are they now?" I asked. Dr. Voss didn't answer. She pulled out a map, the same map I'd seen in her office, covered with red pins marking sleep paralysis reports. But now, 17 of those pins had small photographs attached. Faces. People. They stopped coming to appointments after approximately 40 days, Dr. Voss said quietly. Their homes were found empty, but their walls had the same burn marks you're describing. Complete blueprints of a structure we can't identify. Mathematical notations in their handwriting. References to the final gathering and the monument of sleep. You mean they disappeared? I mean they stopped existing in this building at a specific moment. According to neighbors, their apartments seemed to shift one night. When police investigated, the interior dimensions no longer matched the exterior. The rooms they found inside weren't the same rooms that had been their days before. I'm writing this on day 32 of my episodes. The marks on my walls now cover approximately 60% of my apartment. I don't remember creating most of them, but they're in my handwriting. They're mathematical notations describing a building with impossible waiting for the final piece to be placed, waiting for me to be incorporated into the structure. And the worst part? Part of me understands the blueprint now. Part of me knows exactly what room I'm supposed to occupy in this impossible building. Part of me is eager to take my place. The entity is no longer confined to the corner of my bedroom. It's moving through my apartment, becoming more solid, more real with each night. And I think I'm almost certain that when it finally completes its work, when the last line of the blueprint is burned into my walls, I'm going to wake up somewhere that isn't my bedroom. I'm going to wake up in the structure. And then I'll understand what 17 people before me have already learned. The building was never being built to house us. We were always meant to be the building itself. If you're reading this and you've had sleep paralysis, if you've seen the entity in the corner of your, except in the space where sleep meets paralysis, in that corner you can't quite see, in the geometry of spaces that shouldn't exist, what happens when you reach the end? I asked her. She looked at me for a long moment. I don't think it's an end, she said finally. I think it's a beginning. The beginning of a structure so vast that no one will ever be able to see it in its entirety. A monument built from the collective sleep of everyone it takes to complete it. I'm writing this at 2:47 a.m. I can feel it coming. The weight on my chest, the familiar paralysis, creeping through my limbs. I can see the entity already, more solid than ever, almost translucent, but present, and it's looking directly at me. Its hand is raised. It's drawing again. And for the first time, I don't want to resist. Because I finally understand the blueprint. And I finally understand why there are 17 people waiting for me in the structure underneath. The structure underneath everything we thought was real. They're not trapped. They're already home. If you've experienced sleep paralysis, check your walls.